Hi, thanks for joining me today. The topic is the types of spiritual cleansing. First, a special hello to my listeners in Asheville, North Carolina. I just love knowing that you're tuning in. I know that's another center for spiritual growth and activity, and a lot of spiritual people living there. So thank you so much for supporting the show this way. This is a topic I decided to cover because I'm having a lot of people come to me lately who are going through this more than normal. Let's just start by saying that a spiritual cleansing is a process that removes things from your life which are no longer in your best and highest good. I've noted, in my opinion, that there are three different types of spiritual cleansing, and they are relationships or career, negative input, and diet. They're not particularly in any order. You could experience them individually, spaced out by years in totally different order. You could have the same one happen again and again and again. But a spiritual cleanse happens because there is something or things in your life that are holding you back and keeping your frequency lower than it could be. Your angels will not let these situations go on too long. It's likely that you will feel an internal push to make a change. And if you do not heed that, then change is foisted upon you. So here are some examples of that from my life. There's actually been a lot. The first one, I was working at a radio station and I loved just about everything about the work. But the owners had a bad habit of targeting an employee and making their life miserable. I saw them do this to multiple people, and it was really toxic. Being around that kind of energy was painful for me, but I stayed because I was a single parent and I was making good money doing creative work. My angels were telling me that it was time to switch jobs. I stalled. Well, guess what? The owners eventually turned on me. Of course they did. They'd already targeted everyone else. I was the only one left. It became intolerable very quickly, and I knew I had to leave. And my angels were pushing me to get out of that job for my own sake. I had been guided to go back to school and pursue degrees in psychology so I could transition to the field of mental health, which is what I did. And then I was in a long-term relationship with someone who was a good person, but he'd fallen under the influence of someone who was quite dark. He was changing in ways that were emotionally and energetically painful for me to be around. I loved him, so I stayed. My angels were telling me that it was time to go. I dug my heels in like a mule and stuck it out. Yes, I did talk with him multiple times about the changes I was seeing and how it was affecting me. He listened, but then nothing got better. And I was pretty miserable. And this went on for years. Then it was brought to my attention that he was having an affair with a coworker. That was an eye-opener for sure. He would not admit it, but did not deny it either. And I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But then two other people who had seen them together told me about the affair. It was enough to jolt me out of complacency. I was hearing my angels say, now, 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 like that was getting really urgent. I got the message. I got out. Let's talk a little bit about going with the flow. You're listening or watching this show now, so I know you're consciously working on yourself personally and spiritually. And as you do this, your frequency rises. And this means that you are changing, but the people and circumstances in your life have most likely stayed the same. Because your frequency has risen and you have lower frequency people or environments around you, you will eventually feel it. You might feel uncomfortable. Perhaps you have a realization you no longer enjoy being around certain friends. It could be you have no longer have passion for your work. This extends to some physical sensations. And one of those sensations is feeling nauseous when you hear, read, or talk about violent, hate-filled, angry topics. Most news falls under this category. Know that this discomfort and the dis-ease, being very clear, that you feel isn't going to go away until you make the necessary changes you're being guided to make. If you choose to fight this process, that sense of discomfort is only going to increase. So it comes to a point where you feel stuck in life or in aspects of your life. You might even lose the ability to access your spiritual gifts for a while. And that is a sign that your frequency is being lowered or damaged by the low frequencies around you. I always visualize this like when I'm around really toxic people or toxic environment. And the way I feel it is so painful that the visual given to me is like a dagger going into your energy field, putting holes in it, literally damaging it so your energy starts leaking out. So the answer to this is to go with the flow. Just let happen what needs to happen in your life. When you do this, life gets easier. You will feel better and you'll experience shifts forward, both personally and spiritually. Can't do one without the other. It just happens hand in hand. We humans are not meant to be stagnant in our lives. Change is normal, change is all around us, and it's constant. So let's talk about relationships and what that is like when there's a spiritual cleanse happening with a relationship. And it is a common type of spiritual cleansing. Let's say you've been in a romantic relationship for years and everything was fine, or you've been good friends with someone for a long time. This type of spiritual cleansing can happen with your family members too. Suddenly you feel disconnected from a person. You realize you don't have much in common and you're wondering, how did I not see this? Like you realize like this has been coming on for years. Perhaps you feel the need to edit your conversation because they're not on a spiritual path. They're either not going to understand or they're not going to be interested. They're probably doing the same thing with you. You might simply not enjoy being around them anymore and you're not sure why. Conversation becomes difficult because your interests and theirs are so divergent. Nothing changed about that person. They're still the same person you married or became friends with, or when the family you were born into. You can probably guess where I'm headed with this. What has changed is you. When you work on personal and spiritual growth, you cannot stay the same. It's impossible. Your frequency has risen, and theirs has not, or it hasn't raised enough to harmonize with your high frequency. And this creates an energetic discord between you. Sure, you could stop growing personally and spiritually, but you cannot unlearn what you know. And that old saying, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, is so true. You have little choice but to keep moving forward. I don't know anyone who worked to grow significantly spiritually and then decided to forget everything and go backward. It just doesn't happen because that's not natural. When you're going through this type of spiritual cleansing with a relationship, being around people whose frequency no longer matches yours can leave you feeling drained, sad, or confused, or all of the above. You don't want to walk away from this relationship, so maybe you hang on longer, and it just keeps feeling more and more uncomfortable. And you know what's going on. Understand that that other person feels that discomfort too. They just don't know why they feel it. They have no idea what the problem is. So you are the one who needs to take action. It's not a situation you can explain to them, not well, because it will feel like a put down from their point of view. And it's not. This is not about one person being superior or better than another. It's just a situation. So in the end, it's likely you will choose to end that relationship. Know that when you reach that point, it will be an act of kindness both for them and for you. And yes, it's going to hurt at first. You're going to feel some sadness and you will miss them. But understand that you are missing the relationship you used to have with them, and that is now in the past. So let that person go with love. Bless them and allow both of you to follow the path you're each meant to be on. Both of you will be happier. Remember that you can't make another person step on a spiritual path or even start doing personal growth, let alone spiritual growth, or make them do it faster. It's a personal journey, and we have to allow each person to have their own. And if yours no longer works with theirs, or they're not even having begun the process, then again, you bless them and you release them with love. So if it's a family member, it may come down to spending as little time with them as possible, having boundaries, like when I feel this, I know it's time to leave, or if this happens, I'm going to excuse myself. And if it comes to a point where being around them is energetically painful for you, you may choose not to see them again, and it won't be being mean or judgmental. But if you don't protect yourself and your energy, who will? Nobody else knows what you're feeling in your energy except you. A sign of this situation happening is that you might feel drained and exhausted after being around a person. There's awkward silences where neither of you knows what to say. Inability to find common ground anymore. Feeling like you don't fit in. So just keep that in mind. I'm not asking you to make a change, and I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm presenting information to you so you can think about this, reflect upon it as you go through your personal life, and see if this resonates for you and perhaps answers a question you've had. So how does this work with a career? You can experience a spiritual cleansing involving the work that you do. If it's happening to you now, you've been feeling it for a while. You simply don't enjoy your work anymore. The passion is gone, or the people are toxic. Just having a toxic boss can start this off. And I've certainly experienced where a job was wonderful, and then a new boss came in and it became really toxic really fast. So things can change on a dime. If you dread going to work, I don't mean just not wanting to go, but dread going to work, that is a big sign waving up in the air saying, hello, it's time to move on. And just as happens in your personal life, your frequency may no longer work with the frequency of the work you do. Or perhaps it's the frequency of some of the people you work with, and that's the problem. When you reach your limit, you have a hard time making yourself go to work. It's an absolute slog to get through the day. The passion you had for your work is just gone, poof, like you never had it. Understand that you did not do anything wrong. It's likely that you're meant to shift into some new work. And this has happened to me a few times, and it's what I mean by our life purposes morph. You know, I had a life purpose to do one thing, and then I was guided to do something else, and now I'm doing this. I don't know if this is what I'll always do, but it is what I'm supposed to do now, and the same can be true for you. You heard me talk about the first time that I realized I was going through a spiritual cleansing when I worked in radio. The second was after I had worked at a psychiatric hospital for about 6.5 years. I love the patients and the work, but I had seen a trend that was worrisome. Of the 7 managers working there, myself included, 3 had died in the previous year due to stress-related issues. It was a very stressful job. I was mulling that over when the medical director casually tells me that, hey, your position's the one most likely to be killed within the field of mental health. I remember thinking, why did he just tell me that? Really? Well, that's horrifying news. But it really stuck with me, and I know it was no accident, because this is what happened shortly afterward. A seriously mentally ill man who had been recently released from the state hospital barricaded himself in my office with me for hours, and it was terrifying. And security did get him out, but the next week he slashed the tires on my car and was threatening towards me. I'd already had a dangerous stalker who was a patient there. These new events made me feel really unsafe. And I just had that gut feeling, that absolute certainty that I needed to leave. I secured another position quickly, and during this time, My angels were telling me to get a different job. They said I was not safe. I was smart enough to listen this time. I could deal with my remaining time at the psychiatric hospital because there was light at the end of the tunnel. And you can do this too. Even if you love your work, you're reluctant to leave, there's always something better on the other side of a spiritual cleansing, no matter what it's about. Let's talk about negative input because this is another type of spiritual cleansing. This one makes itself known when you're watching, reading, listening to, or talking about something scary, violent, or angry. These are low frequency emotions, so it's not surprising that as your frequency rises, low frequency emotions will hurt you. For me, this manifested as having a stomach ache and feeling nauseous when I would watch a horror movie. I used to love them, but suddenly I could not watch them. It happened like that. Scary books, no more. Sorry, Stephen King, I could not read any more of your books at that point. I would get terrible nightmares and they left me feeling unnerved. I had to go to reading. If you have heard of Maeve Binchy, she was an Irish author and sadly she passed fairly recently. She was my favorite author to read before bed because it was really lovely stories about life in Ireland in the 50s. And that I would feel so relaxed and good and have sweet dreams. So, if you're having an issue with that, change your reading material. When I watched or listened to too much news because of all the glorifying of violence, doom, and gloom, I had the same reaction. Now, I enjoy a good scientific experiment, so I conducted some behavioral experiments on myself, as I often do. And that's how I figured out what was causing my stomach pain and nausea, trial and error. And you can do the same thing to convince yourself of the truth of what I'm saying here. I don't expect you to just believe everything I say. Try it for yourself. The pain will be in your solar plexus, which is your upper abdomen. It's between the belly button and the rib cage, and mine will ache. That chakra is the biggest receiver in your body, and it is a complement to your spiritual growth that your frequency has become high enough to so quickly react to low frequency. It doesn't feel good, but it is one sign of spiritual growth that'll tell you you're making progress. You can shift through this type of spiritual cleansing by changing your habits. Avoid low frequency entertainment and discussions. Minimize your news intake. Consider reading it instead of watching it. Set a timer so you don't accidentally go down a rabbit hole. And don't engage in low frequency conversational topics. In my experience, most political discussions will fall into this category if the people involved are balanced and able to actually discuss and listen to another's point of view without becoming angry, then you're probably going to be fine. But if you start feeling those symptoms of dis-ease with your energetic field, it needs to stop. It takes time and diligence to change habits, but eventually this will be second nature. As your frequency continues to rise, you might go through this again. And at that point on your spiritual journey, you will need to further revise your habits. And lastly, let's talk about diet. This type of spiritual cleansing is when you are moved intuitively and by your angels to clean up your diet. It's not the same thing as going on a diet. This is not about cutting calories or losing weight. It's a focus on putting food and beverages into your body that are going to help you raise your frequency and therefore increase your spirituality and your personal growth. Different foods and beverages have different frequencies. I did an episode about this. I think it was last year. You can go check that out, giving lists of the ones that raise your frequency and the ones that lower it. Organic produce and purified water are high frequency. Beef and some other meats, sugar, alcohol, processed foods, and other things are low frequency. Look at this as like your budget body is wanting to become a high functioning race car. This can't happen if you keep putting cheap gas in your body. Food is fuel for your body, and food is definitely fuel for your frequency. When you're going through a dietary spiritual cleanse, you will crave healthier foods and start losing your taste for the unhealthy ones. For me, it began with not tolerating sugar. I actually didn't even tolerate it as a child. It always made me feel sick, and I really didn't want it. Later, I just couldn't eat it. And then I couldn't drink carbonated beverages. All of a sudden, I hadn't had one in a while, and I took a sip, and it just tasted like a mouthful of chemicals, which it is. And I still don't like them. I began drinking even more water than I already was, and it's purified water. And then I had already lost liking for beef, never really was much for beef, but then chicken. I didn't like chicken anymore. And since then, I rarely eat meat. When I do, it's fish generally, and I just don't eat a lot. I eat it sparingly. I'm not trying to be anything like a vegetarian or any of that. This is just what I've been guided spiritually to do. And remember that I've been on this journey since I was about 18 years old. So I've been through many shifts along the way. I did not make all these changes at once. I think that's a mistake. It throws you into a little bit of shock, makes it harder to stick with it. It is an ongoing process, and once it begins, you can go through this multiple times in your lifetime. I would almost assure you that you will, with different foods and drinks. And that's due to your frequency continuing to rise. A higher vibrating body requires higher frequency food. And if you are doing already spiritual work and readings, healings, yoga, meditation, anything like that, you're already at a point where you need your frequency to be as high as possible to do the most effective work in your field. If you ever want to do that, that's another goal, to go with the flow of what your body and your angels tell you need. And let me just say, I'm a realist. I know money's tight, and I understand having budgets, but you don't need to instantly make changes in your diet. When your body needs it, you're going to know. Don't worry about it. Know that you're doing a great job raising the vibration of your body with every little change you make. There's no reason to put your family on the same diet you feel moved to follow for yourself. Their frequency may not have the same requirements as yours. I remember when my daughter was 2.5 years old, and her father really liked ham. And so we would have ham now and then, and all of a sudden she would not eat it, just couldn't tolerate it. And that has not changed for her entire life. Now she's 43 and she still does not like ham at all. And, I had to respect that because I understood she was being guided not to eat that. It wasn't for her. And that's okay. Here's a few signs that you can look for telling you that your body needs higher frequency foods and beverages. And this goes for smoking, drinking, illegal drugs, all of the things that are toxic as well. Number one, you suddenly don't enjoy the taste of something you used to like, or don't enjoy an activity like smoking the way you used to. All of a sudden, it just turns you off. You feel nauseous after eating a particular food or drinking a specific beverage. Never had a problem before, and all of a sudden you do, and you keep having that reaction. You feel an inner push to make a specific change. You just feel like you need to do it. Now's the time. You hear a thought in your head telling you to make a change. This can be your angels talking to you, or even your higher self, which is your soul, giving you this guidance. Just know it's coming from a very high place of great overall knowledge. The last is you crave something healthy. I crave some really weird things. My family's just shaking their heads. My recent one is black beans with tomatoes cubed up on top and red onion on top of that. I don't know why. I'm just trusting my body needs something in that combo, and I go with it. So let's look forward here. As I mentioned earlier, these spiritual cleanses are not a one-time event. You're not going to have each one time or in any specific order. You may never have one of them, and you may have one over and over and over. They can happen a few times or many times throughout your lifetime. But every time you reach a new higher frequency, You can expect to have both internal pushes and angelic guidance to encourage you to make further changes. You will know what's right for you. Only you know that. You're going to feel it. You will be hearing your angels telling you what to do. And it won't be once because they'll just keep telling you till you do it. And you might not like it, but this happens to assist you in shifting to even higher frequencies. If you long to live in 5D or to ascend, then this is a necessity. Continuous spiritual growth, continually raising your frequency. So do your best to relax and just go with the process. Don't try to force it. When you feel a push or guidance to make a change, you're not losing anything. It's just a change. Life is full of change and rarely is it really negative. Even if it seems like it in the moment, it almost always leads to something better. Change is inevitable. Trust that your spiritual cleanses are going to lead you to remarkable growth. If you've already experienced this or have stories to share, please share it here in the comments because it does my listeners a lot of good. And the people who are watching it here on YouTube, a lot of good. There's a lot of conversations going on YouTube. So don't be shy, share your experiences. And I just want to let you know, next Sunday's topic is angelic resonance healing. This is the type of energy healing that my angels provided to me. So, oh my gosh, what, 5 or 6 years ago, and said, this is what you're going to start doing. And they told me what I needed, the crystals required, and how to do it. And that's the main healing that I do now. So I'll be showing you what I use and telling you how I do it and explaining how it works. It might be something you're doing and don't even know it. You might have a different name for it. I just use what my angels gave me. In the meantime, may your angels surround you. May your angels protect you every moment, every day of your life. I'll see you next week.